What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday in Modern Warfare 3, with the launch of Season 5 Reloaded, we got the brand new Torque 35 compound bow, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a deep dive into this to share exactly how it works, as well as how the various arrows work. And one of the most important things to point out with this right up front here is there are technically two different ways of firing it. There's the quick draw way, where you just tap the fire button, and it will fire that arrow as quickly as possible. And with this, the arrow velocity is really slow, there's a massive drop off to it, so it's not really effective at longer ranges. And it turns out you actually deal less damage with this, which we'll look at in a little bit, compared to a full draw. If you hold the fire button instead of just tapping it, you will actually draw the bow, which will give you significantly better velocity and a lot more damage, so you should be seeing fewer hit markers. So let's have a look at this damage and range comparison here. First off, looking just at the quick draw, if you just tap that fire button, what kind of damage are you dealing? Well, in the maximum damage range from 0 to 20.3 meters, with the standard arrow at least, we're dealing 76 damage to the legs, so it's going to be a 2-shot kill to the legs, 114 damage to the torso and arms, so again, still a 2-shot kill, and 150 damage to the head. So you will be able to get a 1-shot kill to the head in that maximum damage range just by tap firing. Also, it appears the neck damage is equal to the head damage, so it's also a 1-shot kill to the neck. However, beyond that 20.3 meters, if you're using this quick draw, you can't get a 1-hit kill on a full health enemy, since we're only dealing 142 damage to the head now. With a full draw, on the other hand, in the maximum damage range, it's a 1-hit kill anywhere in the body, since we're dealing 150 damage to the legs, and obviously more damage anywhere else in the body. However, beyond that 20.3 meters, you will get a hit marker to the legs. It is a 2-shot kill to the legs, but it's a 1-shot kill everywhere else in the body. So it's still reasonably consistent when using the full draw, you just can't aim for the legs. So that's the basics of damage just using the standard arrows, although that also applies to the caustic or tear gas arrows, as well as the snapshot arrows. All of the other arrows have a different damage profile that we'll look at toward the end of the video. But next, let's get into our rate of fire. And I only calculated rate of fire when using quick draw, since with the full draw, it's kind of impossible to get the absolute perfect timing on exactly when you get into a full draw every time you fire an arrow. But with quick draw, our rate of fire is just 73 rounds per minute, which isn't super fast, although it is faster than some of the bolt action sniper rifles in the game at least. And interestingly, just like with the Morris sniper rifle, part of this rate of fire is technically a reload time, and therefore I was thinking mag holster should improve our rate of fire potential at least to some degree. So I did the testing with this one, and I was very surprised to find that we actually get a slower rate of fire potential with mag holster compared to not using mag holster. So I don't know why that is exactly. You might notice in the comparison clips, some of the animations appear to be faster with mag holster, but the actual time to fire the arrow is a little bit longer. It's like there's a little delay added in there, I believe unintentionally. So perhaps this is something that will change down the road. Maybe it is just a bug, but as of right now, mag holster will slow your rate of fire down on the Torque 35. And then another timing, I tried to measure to the best of my ability with frame-by-frame testing, keeping in mind this may not be 100% perfect. This is the time it takes to get into a full draw. And as far as I can tell, this is roughly 400 milliseconds. So if you are planning on using full draw, it's typically going to be in your best interest to draw the bow before you end up seeing your target. And then if you want to cancel that, just swap your weapons, and that will save that arrow and prevent you from having to fire it. And speaking of saving arrows, with the exception of the Blastcap Arrow, the Blaze Arrow, and the Caustic Arrow, we are able to recover our arrows after firing them. So there's no scavenger perk required for this, you can just go and pick up your arrows. After that though, let's have a look at another important stat with the Torque 45, and this is our arrow velocity with a full draw. Because the various arrow types will have an effect on our velocity, but by default, based on my measurements, it appears our arrow velocity will be around 200 meters per second, whereas with the Ripper arrows, the Blastcap arrows, and the Blaze arrows, we will get a slower arrow velocity, and therefore there will be more drop as well, so you have to aim a little bit higher if you're stretching out your ranges with those arrow types. However, for the Caustic Arrows and the Snapshot Arrows, they appear to have the exact same arrow velocity as the default arrow, despite the fact that with the Caustic Arrow, one of the cons states we see a reduction to our bolt velocity, or arrow velocity. That just didn't appear to be the case based on my testing. And with that out of the way, before we dive deeper into the different arrow types and the different damage values that we'll get with some of them, there's one last important characteristic I wanted to point out with the Torque 35, and that's the fact that it ignores trophy systems entirely, and it's actually great at countering trophy systems, regardless of which arrow type you're using. If you read the descriptions for them, some of them state that it ignores trophy systems, whereas others don't have that statement attached to them. But in my testing, all of the arrow types, including the base arrow, will completely ignore a trophy system, and as long as you're drawing fully, you will actually destroy a trophy system with one single arrow, so it's an excellent way to counter those. And with all that out of the way, let's get into the various arrow types and how they impact our damage values, and we'll start it off with the Ripper arrows. With these ones, the description states that they fly slower, but they deal massive damage on impact. And it also states we get a slower fire rate, but that's just not the case based on my testing. All of the arrows have the exact same fire rate. But it does reduce our arrow velocity like we saw earlier. And now let's have a look at our damage values with both quick draw and full draw. And in this case, you can see that we are dealing more damage overall. However, realistically speaking, it's not actually changing the number of shots to kill in any situation outside of full draw beyond the maximum damage range. We are capable of getting a one-hit kill to the legs, whereas without the Ripper arrows, it's going to be a two-hit kill to the legs. Outside of that, though, it's going to be the same number of shots as the base arrows. So with quick draw, for instance, the only time you're getting a one-shot kill against a full health enemy is with a head or neck shot in the maximum damage range. So as a result of that, personally, I wouldn't recommend the Ripper arrows, unless you're somebody that's frequently hitting leg shots at longer ranges when in full draw, which honestly, that probably shouldn't account for too many of your situations that you're running into with this bow. As for the next arrow type, we have the Blastcap Arrows, which are the explosive arrows. And with these, like we saw earlier, our arrow velocity is slower. Our arrow accuracy is also a little bit worse, so it's not going to be quite as accurate to your point of aim. And then on top of that, our reserve arrows is reduced from 19 down to just 7. As for damage, the way this works is it significantly reduces the amount of damage you deal right up front when you hit the target, but then you add 200 explosive damage on top of that in all situations, regardless of the range and regardless of whether or not the player is using EOD. So when that arrow explodes, it's going to deal 200 damage to them no matter what. And what this means is even though we are seeing a range reduction as well, it doesn't matter what range we're at, it doesn't matter if we're using quick draw or full draw, no matter what, if you hit somebody with the Blastcap arrow, they will die when it explodes. And just a quick note with EOD, if you don't hit them directly, EOD will protect you to a degree from that explosive damage, because there is some splash damage as well for a missed shot. But even without EOD, that's not going to be enough splash damage to kill a full health enemy. Also, the best part of these Blastcap arrows is against Riot Shield users, it's still a guaranteed one-hit kill. As long as you hit them on the shield, they will die regardless of whether or not they're using EOD. And that works whether you're full draw or quick draw as well. You just need to get that arrow stuck to the shield in order to kill that player. I believe the only way they could potentially survive is if they swap their shield for a different gun, then it technically drops the shield on the ground. It's no longer attached to them. They could survive in that case, but outside of that, they're definitely going to die. So overall, I would actually say this is the new best counter for Riot Shield users because it's really easy to hit them with this at any range. And once you hit them with that arrow, they're going to die. But that wraps it up for the Blastcap arrows. Now let's move on to the Blaze arrows, which are the thermite tipped ones. And with these, when you combine the hit damage with the burn damage that takes place on a direct impact, with quick draw, we're dealing more damage overall, but it's still only going to be a one-shot kill to the head or neck. However, range is irrelevant now with this arrow. Even though there is a range drop-off point, it doesn't actually mean anything with the Blaze arrows. And then in full draw, it's going to be a one-hit kill anywhere in the body at any range. Although it's worth noting, if you hit him in the leg, for instance, it's actually going to take quite some time for that burn damage to take effect and end up killing that player. So that is a downside to consider. And on top of that, we do see a pretty significant reduction to our velocity, so it is going to make it harder to hit our targets at longer ranges especially. And it is also worth noting, just like with EOD, if you direct impact them with these Blaze arrows, EOD does nothing to protect that player. It will only provide some protection if it's not a direct impact. As for Riot Shields, while the description states that this is really good against Riot Shield players, it turns out even with a full draw, you don't get a one-hit kill against Riot Shield users, because apparently you just don't get the body multipliers required for that one-hit kill. And therefore, no matter what, it's going to be a two-hit kill against Riot Shield players if they've got full health, regardless of whether or not they're using EOD. So as a result, when it comes to dealing with Riot Shield users, while this isn't a terrible counter, the Blastcap arrows are the clear winner here. After that though, let's have a look at the Caustic Arrows, which are pretty straightforward since they deal the exact same damage as the base arrows, so there's no changes there. However, if you hit a target, then it will explode with a cloud of tear gas, just like the gas grenade in the game, so it will obscure their vision, and if they're not using tac mask, it'll take one of their hands off their gun so they can only hip fire for a period of time, and it will slow them down. But interestingly, if you don't actually hit a player with these bolts, they won't create that gas cloud. They actually won't do anything. So overall, I would say these are just designed to create an annoyance for enemy players. But then finally, let's talk about the Snapshot Arrows. And these, just like with the Caustic Arrows, deal the same damage as the base arrows, so nothing to go over there. We also don't see any velocity reduction. We get the same reserve ammo, so it's basically exactly the same as the base arrows. But if that arrow lands within about 6 meters of an enemy player, it will act like a snapshot grenade, and it will reveal them briefly through walls. And this will also detect them through walls as well, so you don't have to have a line of sight on them with that arrow. And honestly, with these, there's not much reason to not use those over the base arrows. It's all upsides here, and you could actually use this to your advantage quite effectively. And there we go. That's finally going to wrap it up for the full breakdown of the Torque 35 compound bow in Modern Warfare 3. And when it comes to my thoughts on this, I think it's great. It's actually quite competitive if you treat it right, but it is also quite unforgiving compared to like a regular full auto gun in the game. That one-shot kill potential is pretty deadly though, and it can also be very frustrating to play against if you are just using a regular full auto gun, especially if you're playing against somebody that's really good with this bow. But in general, I really like the change of pace that this offers. There's nothing quite like this in the game. I know we have a crossbow, but it's not quite like this, and honestly, it's not nearly as good as the Torque 35, which is interesting because the crossbow is a primary weapon, and the Torque 35 is a secondary in the launcher category. In either case, those are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this bow in those comments down below. And if you guys enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.